Hey everybody, Jay the Fish Guy back again. Today's episode we are going to talk about sand beds in your reef tank. How much sand, how deep to go, bare bottom, no sand bed. Just my opinion on the topic. Alright, here we go. My opinion on sand beds. If I'm suggesting to a new customer, or possibly they're just simply upgrading to a bigger tank, when they ask me what to do for a sand bed, my first suggestion always, no sand bed, bare bottom, literally. And why do I suggest that? Well, I've had the pleasure over the many years that I've been in this hobby, as well as doing it professionally for 14 years, to see tanks as they get older. So not the first year, not the second year, sometimes depending on the tank, but what a tank looks like 4 or 5 years down the road. And what I see consistently is what I like to refer to as old tank syndrome. And what that means is you've had a tank set up for a few years and the rock hasn't moved in probably those few years. It's been that way since the day you set it up. You like it, you love it, you spent a lot of time making it look good. It's a point of pride, because it's like art. When you're putting it all together, you want it to look good. And you don't want to touch it after you get it the way you want it. So what'll happen as this just kind of sits for years, the corals grow over everything, they kind of fuse it all together, and you still have under all that rock a good, 2, 3, 4 inches of sand if you're not doing anything too crazy. Detritus and waste and bits and pieces of, coral and rock and everything else, they just kind of compact in the sand bed. Sometimes it turns almost into like a brick. Sometimes it turns into like a mud. I've had to tear down some tanks or move some tanks where, man, it gets pretty sketchy down there. And why is this a problem? Okay, well, let's just focus on the detritus aspect of it. Food and waste that has gone into the sand bed, it's gone uneaten, it gets broken down by the bacterias living in there. In a perfect world, all of it, well, in real life, no, it doesn't. It just builds up and builds up and builds up. So what'll happen is you'll get perfect water quality results, and I say perfect, okay, what the test reads as 0 or close to it, depending on your test kit, for nitrates and phosphates. But you just have algae, just randomly, hair algae, pockets of cyano, and you can't figure it out. I've seen customers drive themselves crazy, and, I understand. It's like, well, my water's perfect. Why am I getting algae? Well, it's localized fertilizer, literally, that you have these areas of detritus that are just feeding the algae in that area. Even rock is porous, and it sucks up this detritus, and it'll feed the algae right there on the rock or on the sand bed in that area. Worst case scenario, if it's a really bad, setup, maybe the whole tank, you just got hair algae everywhere, and people can't figure it out because their water quality is perfect. It all comes from the fact that you can't maintain your sand bed underneath the rock, and when you're doing good aquascaping, it comes out pretty far to the front of the tank sometimes. So that's a lot of sand bed that you can't touch or move or vacuum or anything. So that's all loaded with this detritus, and you can't do anything about it. The only way to fix it is to literally pull the tank apart, pull the sand bed, and get all that stuff out of there. And once it reaches that point, there's no coming back. You can sit there and rinse the sand till you're blue in the face. It's not getting any better. So at that point, people will do new sand beds, or if they ask me, don't do any sand at all. And I'm sure there's a lot of people screaming in their chairs right now, I gotta have the sand bed, I need all the flora, fauna, living little creatures in there to make the tank work, all the bacteria. Well, you can do without it, literally. In my opinion, of all the tanks I've seen and done over the years, the benefits of not having the sand bed far outweigh having one. You'll never have old tank syndrome. If you get detritus or anything collecting under the rocks, well, you know how you fix that? You take a pump and you blow it under the rock. It all comes out. It kind of makes a mess. Corals might eat some. Fish might eat some. Have your mechanical filtration working, meaning filter socks or something similar. And it'll pull it all out, do a water change when you're done, and you're good. You know, that's worst case scenario, maybe an hour or 2 hour project. Let me tell you, removing your sand bed out of a tank that hasn't been touched for 4 or 5 years, not a 2 hour project. And you're not going to have fun doing it. So, no sand bed. The look kind of throws people off. They really, it's a hard sell initially. Every customer I've convinced to do it, long term, love it. The maintenance is easier. You grow coralline on the bottom. You put some zoos down there, mushrooms, encrusting SPS, whatever you want. Anything you can grow on the bottom, depending on your lighting. You know, and everything looks great. And you get over the fact that you don't have that bright white sand bed, which, hey, it doesn't stay bright white forever. We all know that. So yeah, no sand bed. If you can see some tanks and, you know, see some established tanks that don't have one, the look really isn't that bad. And believe me, if you're a new hobbyist or even one that's been in it for a little while and you're kind of on the fence, you will thank me later. You don't want a sand bed in there. So again, just my opinion, you know, just my experience over the years. Some people got to have a sand bed, and that's fine. If you're gonna do one, trace them out, ½ inch, an inch maybe, just enough to cover the bottom. If you can help it, don't put it under the rocks. You know, that way you can still kind of blow everything out later down the line and kind of keep everything to the front. It's gonna go back under the rocks, but it's not gonna be nearly as much, and it's not gonna create that mud brick layer that you just don't want, and you're going to have issues later with, guaranteed, if you stay in the hobby and you keep the tank up. So, all right, guys, thanks for watching. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks.